You won't put my name on your house? After everything we've done for you? That's what my son said to me, standing in the middle of my own living room, his face red with frustration. His wife Karen stood behind him, arms crossed, nodding like she'd rehearsed this moment. I didn't respond right away. At 68, I've learned that some words don't deserve immediate answers. I was sitting in the armchair by the window, the one my late husband Leonard built with his own hands 30 years ago. My fingers gripped the armrest, worn smooth from decades of use. My grandson Tyler was somewhere upstairs, probably pretending he couldn't hear any of this. Mom, it's not like we're asking you to give it away, Richard continued, his voice climbing. We just need you to add me to the deed. It's a formality. We need collateral for the business loan, and your house is just sitting here. Like my home of 42 years was a forgotten coat in a closet. The answer is no, I said quietly. Karen stepped forward. Dorothy, be reasonable. Rick has a chance to expand the auto shop. This is his future, our future, Tyler's future. I looked at her. This woman who had been my daughter-in-law for 26 years. She'd always been polite to me, but polite in the way you're polite to furniture, careful not to scratch it, but never truly appreciating it either. My house is not collateral, I said. It's my home. Leonard and I paid off this mortgage over 30 years. I won't risk it. Richard laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Risk it? Mom, the business is doing fine. You need a bank to believe in your business enough to loan you money without my house attached. If they don't believe in it, why should I? The silence that followed was the kind that changes things. I watched my son's jaw tighten, watched Karen's eyes narrow. They looked at each other, some unspoken message passing between them. Fine, Richard said finally. We'll figure it out ourselves, like we always do. He turned and walked out the front door without another word. Karen lingered a moment longer, her gaze sweeping across the living room like she was appraising an estate sale. You know, she said softly, we've been talking about having you move in with us. For your own good. This house is too big for one person. Too many stairs. Too much maintenance. I met her eyes. I managed just fine. For now. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Things change, Dorothy. People get older. They need help. They need family. After she left, I sat in Leonard's chair for a long time, watching the afternoon light shift across the floor. The house was quiet, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the silence that comes after something breaks. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too stubborn. Leonard would have said no too. I was certain of that. He'd worked double shifts at the factory for 15 years to pay off this house early. He used to say, a man's home is his castle, and a woman's home is her kingdom. Don't ever let anyone take your crown. I smiled at the memory, but the smile faded quickly. Richard was my only child. I'd raised him alone after Leonard's heart attack, worked 2 jobs to put him through trade school, co-signed his first apartment lease. Where had that boy gone? The one who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard and call them the most beautiful flowers in the world? 2 weeks later, Richard called to invite me for Sunday dinner. His voice was warm, almost apologetic. I wanted to believe things had blown over, that we could move past the argument. So I said yes. When I arrived at their house, a sprawling, split level in the new subdivision across town, everything seemed normal at first. Karen had made pot roast. Tyler actually came downstairs to eat with us, which was rare these days. The conversation was light, careful, like we were all walking on fresh ice. Then, over dessert, Richard cleared his throat. Mom, we've been thinking. This house of ours has that nice guest suite in the basement. Fully finished, private bathroom, everything. Karen and I thought maybe you'd like to try staying here for a while. Just to see how it feels. I set down my fork. Try staying here? Just temporarily, Karen added quickly. You know, to give it a test run. See if you like being closer to family. What about my house? Richard shrugged. You could rent it out, generate some income. Or, he paused, glancing at Karen. Or, we could talk about other options later. Other options. I understood perfectly what that meant. They wanted me here, where they could watch me, where my house would eventually become their asset, one way or another. I appreciate the offer, I said carefully, but I'm comfortable where I am. Karen's smile tightened. Dorothy, the stairs in your house are dangerous. You're not getting any younger. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one's there? I've managed those stairs for 42 years. That was 42 years ago, Richard said. Things are different now. Tyler, who had been silent through all of this, finally spoke up. Grandma's fine, Dad. She goes to yoga twice a week. She's probably in better shape than you. Richard shot him a look. Stay out of this, Tyler. But I smiled at my grandson, grateful for the small kindness. He'd always been the gentle one, more like Leonard than Richard ever was. I left early that night, claiming a headache. As I drove home through the quiet streets, I felt something shift in my chest. Not pain, exactly. More like awareness. The awareness that my son didn't see me as his mother anymore. He saw me as an obstacle standing between him and something he wanted. The following month, small things started happening. Richard would call to check on me, but the calls felt more like inspections than conversations. Did you take your blood pressure medication? Are you eating enough? The weatherman says it's going to rain tomorrow. Those front steps of yours get slippery, you know. Karen started dropping by unannounced, always with some excuse. She'd bring me groceries I didn't ask for, then walk through the house with her eyes scanning everything. Once, I caught her photographing the kitchen. She said she wanted to show her sister the vintage cabinets. I didn't believe her. Then the mail started arriving at Richard's house instead of mine. A forwarding error, they claimed. Just a mix-up at the post office. But I had to drive across town 3 times that week to collect my own bills, my own bank statements, my own life being rerouted without my permission. One afternoon, I came home from the grocery store to find a locksmith at my front door. He said Richard had called him, said his elderly mother had locked herself out and lost her spare key. He was there to help. I didn't call anyone, I told him, and I haven't lost any keys. The locksmith looked confused. Your son was very insistent. Said you might be confused, that I should just go ahead and— I am not confused, I said firmly. Please leave my property. He did, apologizing as he went, but my hands were shaking as I unlocked my own door with my own key. I sat in Leonard's chair for a long time after that, trying to understand what was happening. They were trying to prove I couldn't take care of myself. They were building a case, brick by brick, that would eventually be used to take my independence away, and maybe, eventually, my home. That's when I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. I called my lawyer the next morning. Eleanor Chen had handled Leonard's estate and had known our family for decades. I told her everything, the dinner conversation, the mail forwarding, the locksmith. Dorothy, she said slowly, have you considered that your son might petition for conservatorship? The word hit me like cold water. Conservatorship? If he can demonstrate that you're unable to manage your own affairs, a court could give him control over your finances, your property, your medical decisions. It happens more than people realize, especially to elderly individuals living alone. I gripped the phone tighter. I'm 68 years old. I do yoga. I balance my own checkbook. I drive myself everywhere. I know, Eleanor said gently. But that doesn't always matter. What matters is documentation. We need to start protecting you now, before anything escalates. We spent 2 hours on the phone. She recommended I get a full medical evaluation, in writing, confirming my mental competency. She suggested I change the locks on my house and install security cameras. She advised me to stop accepting any help from Richard or Karen that could later be used as evidence of dependency. Most importantly, she said, you need witnesses, people who can testify to your independence, friends, neighbors, anyone who sees you living your life on your own terms. After I hung up, I sat with my hands folded in my lap, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. My own son, my only child, the baby I'd rocked to sleep, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd defended when his teachers said he'd never amount to anything. Was this really happening? That weekend, I started making changes. I had a locksmith I trusted change all the locks and install a deadbolt. I set up a small camera system with help from the nice young man at the electronics store. I opened a new bank account at a different bank and started transferring small amounts, creating a safety net that no one else knew about. But the hardest thing was the distance. I stopped answering Richard's calls right away. I let them go to voicemail and called back hours later, keeping conversations short. When Karen invited me for dinner, I was busy. When they offered to drive me to a doctor's appointment, I'd already arranged my own ride. They noticed. "You're avoiding us," Richard said one evening when he showed up at my door unannounced. I'd seen him on the camera and considered not answering, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. "I've just been busy," I said, standing in the doorway without inviting him in. He looked past me into the house. "What's with the new locks? And is that a camera?" "Security," I said simply. "The neighborhood watch recommended it." His eyes narrowed. "Mom, what's going on? You're acting like you don't trust us." I wanted to say, "Because I don't." I wanted to tell him about the locksmith who showed up to let strangers into my home, about my mail being diverted like I was already incompetent, about the way Karen walked through my house with appraising eyes. Instead, I said, "I'm just being careful. That's what you wanted, isn't it? For me to be safe?" He didn't have an answer for that. Weeks passed. The tension between us grew thicker, harder to ignore. Richard stopped calling as often. Karen's pop-in visits ceased entirely. I should have felt relieved, but instead, I felt hollow. This was my family, the only family I had left, and we were drifting apart like continents. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, in a plain white envelope. Inside was a formal notice that Richard was filing a petition with the county court to establish a conservatorship over my person and estate, citing concerns about my declining cognitive abilities and inability to manage daily affairs. I read it 3 times before the words stopped blurring. Declining cognitive abilities, inability to manage daily affairs. My son was trying to have me declared incompetent. I called Eleanor immediately. She wasn't surprised. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she said. "But don't panic, Dorothy. A petition isn't a ruling. We'll fight this. I need you to get that medical evaluation done this week. I'll start gathering character witnesses. And I want you to start keeping a detailed journal of your daily activities, everything you do that demonstrates your independence." I spent the next month in a blur of appointments, a comprehensive cognitive test at the hospital, where a young neurologist asked me to count backward from 100 by 7s, to remember 3 words, to draw a clock. I passed everything with flying colors. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, smiling, "your mind is sharper than most 50-year-olds I see." I gathered letters from friends, neighbors, even the owner of the yoga studio, who wrote that I was one of the most dedicated and capable students she'd ever taught. The woman at the pharmacy wrote that I'd been managing my own medications for years without a single error. My dentist, my hairdresser, the librarian who knew me by name, all of them stepped forward. The court date arrived on a gray November morning. I wore my best dress, navy blue with small white buttons, and the pearl earrings Leonard had given me for our 25th anniversary. Eleanor sat beside me, her briefcase filled with evidence of my competency. Richard sat across the aisle with his own attorney, a sharp-faced woman who shuffled papers without ever looking in my direction. Karen was there too, in the back row, her face unreadable. What I didn't expect was Tyler. He walked in just before the proceedings started, still in his work uniform from the automotive shop where he'd taken a job after high school. He looked nervous, out of place, but he walked straight to my side of the courtroom and sat down in the row behind me. "Grandma," he whispered, leaning forward. I told the truth. I didn't understand what he meant until his name was called as a witness. Tyler took the stand and, in his quiet way, dismantled everything his parents had claimed. He told the court about how I cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 12 people just last year, managing everything myself. He described our weekly chess games, which I won more often than not. He talked about finding his grandmother doing yoga in the backyard, about the garden I maintained single-handedly, about the way I remembered every birthday, every anniversary, every small important thing. "My grandmother isn't confused," he said, looking directly at his father. "She's just not willing to give up her home so you can use it as a piggy bank. That's not the same thing." Richard's face went pale. Karen stood up and walked out of the courtroom. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked over her glasses at the pile of evidence. My cognitive test results, the letters, the photographs of my organized home, my balanced checkbooks going back decades. "Mr. Patterson," she said to Richard, "I see no evidence whatsoever that your mother is incapable of managing her own affairs. In fact, I see considerable evidence to the contrary." She paused. "This petition is denied, and I would advise you to consider carefully before bringing any similar action in the future." I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. Outside the courthouse, the autumn air was sharp and clean. Eleanor shook my hand and promised to send me the final paperwork. Richard stood by his car across the parking lot, not looking at me. I didn't approach him. There was nothing left to say, but Tyler walked me to my car. "I'm sorry, Grandma," he said quietly. "I should have said something sooner. I knew what they were doing was wrong, but I didn't want to cause trouble." I took his face in my hands, this tall young man who still had his grandfather's eyes. "You said something when it mattered. That's what counts. Can I come visit you sometime? At your house, I mean. For real, not with them." I smiled. "You can come anytime you want. The door is always open for you." He hugged me then, the way he used to when he was small, wrapping his arms around me like I was something precious. That evening, I made myself a cup of tea and sat in Leonard's chair, watching the last light of day fade beyond the window. The house was quiet, but it was my quiet. The silence belonged to me. I thought about Richard, about the boy he used to be and the man he'd become. I wondered where things had gone wrong, whether I could have done something different, loved him better, taught him differently. But I knew that some paths people choose aren't about the parents who raised them. Some choices belong entirely to the child who grew up and chose to become someone else. I couldn't fix Richard. I could only protect myself, and I had. The months that followed were quiet ones. I settled into a rhythm that felt both old and new. I woke early, watched the sunrise from my kitchen window, made coffee the way Leonard used to make it, strong with a little cream. I tended my garden as the seasons changed, watched the chrysanthemums give way to winter hellebores, then to the first crocuses of spring. Tyler came to visit every other Sunday. He'd sit at my kitchen table, eating the cookies I baked, telling me about his work, his friends, a girl he'd started seeing. We played chess, and he was getting better, almost winning sometimes. He never mentioned his parents, and I never asked. Richard called once, about 6 months after the court case. His voice was stiff, uncomfortable. He said he was sorry if he'd made me feel pressured. He didn't say he was wrong. He didn't acknowledge what he'd tried to do, but he asked if maybe we could have lunch sometime. Start fresh. I told him I'd think about it. And I did think about it, for a long time. But thinking about something isn't the same as doing it, and I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. That was okay. Forgiveness isn't an obligation. It's a gift you give when you're able, not a debt you owe. The yoga studio became my sanctuary. Twice a week, I stretched and breathed alongside women my own age and younger, all of us reaching for something beyond our daily limitations. The instructor, a gentle woman named Miriam, started calling me her inspiration. I laughed it off, but secretly, I was proud. I also joined the library book club, 8 of us, meeting every other Thursday to discuss novels and memoirs and occasionally argue about poetry. We were all women over 50, all living our own complicated lives, all finding community in the shared love of stories. One of them, Patricia, had gone through something similar with her own daughter years ago. "They don't tell you this part," she said one evening over wine, "that sometimes the hardest thing about getting old isn't your body giving out. It's watching your children become people you don't recognize." I nodded. I understood. Spring turned to summer. I planted tomatoes and basil, watched hummingbirds dart around the feeder, read on the porch in the long golden evenings. The house that my son had tried to take from me became more precious with each passing day. Every creak of the floorboards, every familiar corner, every memory embedded in the walls, they were mine. No one could take them. On the anniversary of Leonard's death, I visited his grave with fresh flowers and sat on the bench we'd picked out together years ago when he'd known his time was coming. "I kept the house, sweetheart," I told him. "I kept our kingdom." A breeze stirred the leaves above me, and I smiled. One afternoon in late August, I received a letter in the mail. Not a legal document, not a bill. A handwritten letter from Richard. "Mom," it started, "I know I don't deserve your time, but I wanted you to know that I've been seeing a therapist. Karen and I are separated. Tyler won't speak to me. I've lost a lot this year, and I'm starting to understand that I'm the one who pushed everyone away. I was so focused on what I thought I needed that I forgot what really matters. You were right to protect yourself. I just wish I hadn't been the thing you needed protection from. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not just for the court case, but for everything. For not seeing you. For treating you like a means to an end instead of my mother. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. And if you don't, I understand that too. Love, Richard." I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the drawer of my nightstand, next to the photograph of Richard as a baby, the one where he's laughing at something just out of frame. I didn't call him. Not that day, not the next week, but I didn't throw the letter away either. I let it sit there, a small bridge not yet crossed, a door not yet closed. Some things need time. Some wounds need space to heal before you can touch them again. A few weeks later, I was sitting on my porch with a glass of iced tea when a moving truck pulled up next door. The old Miller house had been empty for months, and I'd wondered who would buy it. A young woman got out of the car behind the truck, maybe 30, with tired eyes and a toddler on her hip. She saw me watching and waved. "Hi there, I'm Michelle. This is Sophie." I walked over, introducing myself, offering help that she politely declined. We ended up talking for an hour anyway, standing in her empty driveway while Sophie chased butterflies in the overgrown grass. Michelle was a nurse, newly divorced, starting over in a town where she knew no one. She'd bought the house because it was cheap and had a good school district. She looked overwhelmed. But beneath the exhaustion, I saw determination. "It's a lot," she admitted. "But I had to get out. Had to start fresh, you know?" I did know. Better than she realized. "Well," I said, "you've got a neighbor now. And neighbors look out for each other." She smiled, really smiled, and for a moment, she looked like someone who might just make it. That night, I made a list. Not of things I needed or chores to complete. A list of what I had. A house that was mine. A grandson who loved me. Friends who valued me. A garden that bloomed every spring. My health, imperfect but enough. My mind, still sharp. My independence, hard-won and protected. And now, a new neighbor who might need someone in her corner. I taped the list to my refrigerator, where I'd see it every morning. The leaves turned again. Another fall, another winter, another year measured in small moments of peace. I watched Sophie grow from a toddler into a chatty preschooler who liked to help me water plants. I watched Tyler find his footing, get promoted at work, fall in love with the girl who was now his fiancée. I watched the seasons cycle through my garden, the endless rhythm of growth and rest. Richard and I spoke on the phone once, around Christmas. It was short, awkward, but civil. He told me about his therapy, his efforts to rebuild. I told him about my book club, my yoga, my life that was full without him. We didn't make promises. We didn't pretend everything was fixed. But we talked, and that was something. Some mornings, I still wake up and reach for Leonard's side of the bed, forgetting for a moment that he's been gone for years. Some evenings, I sit in his chair and feel the weight of all the time that's passed, all the things that have changed. But I don't feel alone. Not anymore. Because I learned something these past few years, something I wish I'd known sooner. Your family isn't just the people who share your blood. It's the people who see you, who value you, who make room for you without asking for your crown in return. It's the neighbors who wave hello, the friends who listen, the grandchildren who stand up when it matters. And sometimes, the most important person in your family is yourself. If you're listening to this and something feels familiar, if your presence has become more tolerated than welcomed, if someone you love is slowly erasing the lines around your life, I want you to tell you something. You're not too old to protect yourself. You're not selfish for saying no. Your home, your money, your dignity, they're yours. And anyone who tries to take them, even family, especially family, doesn't deserve access to your peace. Leonard used to say that a person's true character shows not in what they ask for, but in what they're willing to take without asking. I understand that now. My house still stands on the same street where we raised our son. The same oak tree shades the front yard. The same wind chimes Leonard hung 20 years ago still sing in the breeze. But everything is different now because I am different. I am a woman who knows her worth, who guards her boundaries, who loves with open hands, but not open doors. And every morning, when I wake up in my own bed, in my own home, under my own roof, I am grateful. Not for what I almost lost, for what I chose to keep.